David.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. Nice day.
You've only got one, mate. I have three, 5 and 7. But how old's your youngest?
Actually, 7 and 4, and out with the 4-year-old.
7 and 4. Oh, no. Well, 7 and 4, no. So you got one off to school, and you got the 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Good on you. Hard being a dad, isn't it?
It is. It's great, but there's nothing quite prepares you for both the time and the emotional involvement.
No. And you're right, nothing prepares you. Listen, mate, first of all, thank you for joining us. Can I just ask to do, first of all, with Bob Carr? The reason I'm asking you to come on the show today was last week you obviously just searched up some stuff, published it on Kiwiblog, that if Winston Peters is sued by Bob Carr, and I seriously doubt that, Winston Peters will certainly be able to claim truth, won't he?
I think he will, especially that it's a public figure, and public figures, it's a lot harder for them to be able to sue for defamation because what these articles show is there's been very respectable Australian journalists who've written articles saying, when did Bob Carr become such a friend of China? And what they've said is he used to be very anti them, and then he got handpicked to head up a China Institute at a university. And since then, he's been, incredibly pro-China to the degree that people say, he seems to be, very much aligned to them. Now, I don't think it means it's corrupt in any way, but the nature of the job he had, when he travels to China, the Politburo people meet him, etc. You get to be much more positive about it. So I think it was fair enough. Like the language pieces used, you can argue about the exact words, but in terms of the point he was making, which is Bob Carr is very, very pro-China, and in fact, he's been attacked by members of his own party about this.
Yeah, but it's not just that he's pro-China's views either. What those column, and you point them out in your column, but also those articles suggest, I don't suggest, they actually state and they clearly prove, is that Bob Carr has a financial relationship with companies in China and that they support him in his political and educational endeavours, yeah?
Yes, absolutely, and there's a lack of transparency too. The big one, which he did for 5 years, he was handpicked by a billionaire from China, and no one knows quite how much the salary is, how much funding does come from Chinese companies, because they say they don't, but then they list them as partners on their website, which means they do. And the billionaire in question actually got turned down for residency because there had been inappropriate influence peddling elsewhere with people. So, you add it all together. Like, I would be amazed if Bob Carr actually sues Winston for two reasons. One is discovery means that then all the stuff about basically. Yeah. Winston loves being sued, and you never wrestle a figure's head.
Yeah, no, you're right. And just to remind people that there's a process called discovery in which if you are sued in defamation, you are basically entitled to discover anything relevant to what you've stated from the other party. And you're right, David, that would go into all of the background. I'm sure the Australian media would be all over it. Listen, the other thing I'd like to talk to you...
fascinating on that, because it hasn't had much coverage, is how Bob Carr found out. Helen Clark dobbed Winston Peters into him. She heard him on radio and said, this is appalling, and texted him to tell him. And I just think that's fascinating. She twice appointed him foreign minister, or once, etc., defended him, and now she's dobbing him into an Australian politician because he said things she didn't like there. And I don't think that's come out, that, it's actually Helen Clark who's responsible for this sort of becoming a major story by her going to Bob Carr.
Is Helen Clark getting senile? Because at the start, and I asked that question because this is the person that allowed New Zealand troops to land in Afghanistan in the wake of 9/11, that sent a group of New Zealand, a battalion or a company, I think, of engineers to Iraq to complement that invasion. She was clearly in the American pocket, despite coming from a very left-wing and red background. Has she reverted back to type, do you think?
Yeah, because when you're not in office, you're not in the real world. In office, you have to weigh up the politics of, are we going to do our bit against people who are terrorists, etc.? And you do things like, we're supporting reconstruction, not the invasion. But, you've still got troops there getting shot at and having to shoot back. So it's a fine line. But, yes, once you're out of office, you allow yourself to sort of go back to your radical roots of US is bad on everything and we must stay away from them.
Yeah, no, that seems to be the case here. Listen, mate, the other thing I want to talk to you about is last week's poll in particular, and the Mikey Sherman hysteria, I think, is the only word that you could use to describe her reporting of that. Did you have the opportunity, A, to look at her particular report, and B, what was your immediate reaction upon seeing what she was doing on screen?
Yeah, well, I thought I was watching the wrong channel, because this is what News Hub used to do, is they always talk up their polls as catastrophic, calamitous, and they're private media and they pay for polls. So, you get used to it. It almost became a joke. And the thing is, people used to like the TVNZ poll because they didn't overhype it. They didn't try and make it up. They were the more sober channel. And Mikey, maybe she felt she had to make an impact because she's just become political with it. But yes, it was way overhyped because, yes, it shows a change of government, but that's happened before, 6 months in. There's 2.5 years to an election. And, it was contingent on things like, do you really think New Zealand First are below 5%? What's again interesting, Michael, though, is it wasn't just that one story. There were 3 other stories they did about the poll.
Yeah.
Where they asked issues. And the headline was, only 40% support government on fast-tracking consents, 60% are against, unsure or refuse to say. So it sounds like, 3-2 against, but actually it was 40 to 41. You can't add don't knows and refuses to one side, or not credibly. And they didn't do this once, but they did this on 3 separate issues. So I do think TVNZ has some real questions about not the poll itself, but the way they're reporting on the poll, especially when all 4 instances have been basically anti-government.
Well, can I give another one, obviously, and you'd know it too, which was the public sector cutbacks, whether or not New Zealanders approve of that. They reported that as only a minority, I think, support the cutbacks. So, but they decided to take out the 18 to 20% who not only support the cutbacks, but think that the government should go further. And they'd taken that out of the equation.
Yeah, they called it a slim majority, when in fact it was almost 20% gap between those who said they've done it right, or they should go further, and those who said they've gone too far. And that's pretty significant. So, look, and we should be careful about, Mikey Sherman was the person who presented the main one. She's not necessarily the person who writes the web stories, does them all, etc. So I think as TVNZ as an institution, and they had 50 complaints about this, needs to decide, do they want to be the sensationalist TV channel hyping everything up, which means people won't take you so seriously, or are you going to be the one who's going to take a more sober approach to say, look, this is bad news for the government, but, it's only, it's still 2.5 years till the election, so let's not get too excited.